All right, next topic in beliefs and doctrines, and final topic, is Islamic law. The law is important in Islam, much like it is in Judaism. Um, Early Islamic scholars developed something called fiqh. Fiqh means deep understanding or full comprehension. It refers to a body of Islamic law extracted from detailed Islamic sources, or basically it's Islamic jurisprudence. In order to ascertain, interpret, and apply God's guidance as found in the Quran and the Sunnah. It's based on divine revelation, the Quran, and the jurists' interpretation, using their human reason, not blind faith. They attempted to lay out a comprehensive guide to life and society called Sharia, a very misunderstood term by non-Muslims. Laying out Sharia has two goals: define what it means to be a good Muslim, do this, don't do that, and to limit the power of rulers. The Umayyad dynasty, which usurped the caliphate from the rightly guided caliphs, were very authoritarian and sometimes unjust rulers. So this body of Islamic law and lawyers grew up to sort of check their power. Therefore, they're not limited. There are more than four, but there are four major law schools in Sunni Islam. Number one is the Hanafi school, and it's the fiqh with the largest number of followers among Sunni Muslims. It's predominant in the countries that were once part of the historic Ottoman Empire and the sultanates of Turkic rulers in the Indian subcontinent, northwest China, Central Asia. The Delhi Sultanate, for example, and it is a more moderate law school, basically. Now, the Hanbali is the smallest of these four major schools. It's also the most conservative. It is the strict traditionalist school of jurisprudence in Sunni Islam, found primarily in Saudi Arabia and Qatar. It was the forerunner of the Hanbali school was the forerunner of the Wahhabi Salafist movement. Wahhabism, named after a cleric whose last name was Wahhab, I think, was an Arabian movement that was a reaction against Western modernity, just like fundamentalist Christianity is a reaction against modernity. This is what Wahhabism was, and so this is why Hanbali is the most conservative school. And it has outsized influence because of the money and power that oil has given the Saudis. The Maliki school was one of the largest group of Sunni Muslims. It's one of the largest groups of Sunni Muslims, comparable to the fourth school in adherence, but smaller than the Hanafi. So it's important. It's Sharia based on Maliki doctrine is predominantly found in North Africa, West Africa, Chad, Sudan, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Dubai, which is one of the United Arab Emirates. In the medieval era, the Maliki school was also found in parts of Europe under Islamic rule, particularly Islamic Spain and the Emirate of Sicily. The Shafi is a big minority school, like Maliki. In the early history of Islam, it was the predominant school. But with the Ottoman Empire's expansion and patronage, it was displaced by the Hanafi school. It's found really in a grab bag of places now, predominantly found in East Africa, Yemen, the Kurdish regions of the Middle East, the Caucasus Mountains, Palestine, Lebanon, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Maldives, some coastal parts of Sri Lanka, India, Singapore, Myanmar, Thailand, Brunei, and the Philippines. Now, I've not mentioned Shia schools, but the largest, there are several competing schools, contrary schools in Shia. The biggest, though, is the Jafari school. It's has the most, covers the most Shia Muslims. The name is derived from the name of Jafar as-Sadiq, who was the sixth Shia Imam. This is followed by the Twelvers, which are that largest group of Shia Muslims, and Ismailis in general, as well as a small minority of Zaydis. So it's a pretty influential school in Shia. However, despite these differences, there have been numerous fatwas regarding the acceptance of Jafari fiqh as acceptable Muslim legal school by Sunni religious authorities. So many Sunnis have said, okay, well, this is, we'll respect the opinions. We'll consider and respect the opinions of Jafari schools. So they're not, all these schools aren't completely opposed. They're just different. So what is the difference between Sharia, which is, the path of righteousness, and fiqh, Islamic jurisprudence? It's important to understand. Sharia literally means path. And so Sharia law is divine law from revelation. I think it's interesting it means path, because halakha, which is Jewish law, means to walk. So similar ideas. This is the straight path you do to please God. Whereas fiqh is interpretation of the law based on human understanding. So Islamic law is not comparable. It's not the same thing as Sharia. It's a broader category, of which Sharia and fiqh are subcategories. Too often they're equated with each other, but one is immutable. It's important. Let me move this here. And this guy. One is immutable, unchangeable, and one is not. So Sharia, that comes from the Quran, that is unchangeable. Whereas fiqh interpretations can change given circumstances and developments. What about Sharia versus canon? Canon, Canon is an Arabic word which was borrowed from Greek. And the Greek word is also the root word for the modern English word canon. As in English it means canon law, means church law, ecclesiastical law. And canon in Arabic simply means law, or more broadly, or rules. It can refer to laws promulgated by Muslim sovereigns, in particular the Ottoman sultans, in contrast to Sharia, the body of law elaborated by Muslim jurists. So it's more, wouldn't call it wholly secular, but it's more secular issues. After the fall of the Abbasids in 1258, Turks and Mongols practiced canon, which gave power to caliphs, governors, and sultans to make laws for activities not addressed by Sharia. So this became increasingly important as the Middle East started to modernize, thus running into problems of a modern state, which are not covered by Sharia. Cars aren't mentioned in the Quran, so we had to come up with laws around that. The canon began to unfold as early, however, as Umar the First, who was the second caliph after Abu Bakr. Many of the regulations covered by canon were based on regulatory matters in those territories that Islam conquered. And that is a brief overview of Islamic law.